Syrian army makes major advances on the Islamic State stronghold of Raqqa. John Kerry meets the French foreign minister as Benjamin Netanyahu continues to reject the French peace initiative. And former heavyweight champion Mohammad Ali has died at the age of 74. Good afternoon. Welcome to i24 News. We begin in Syria, where, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, heavy Russian airstrikes hit the Islamic State-held territory near the boundary of Raqqa province on Friday, allowing President Bashar al-Assad's army to approach the edge of the province. Raqqa city is the Islamic State's de facto capital in Syria, and along with Mosul in Iraq, the ultimate target of those seeking to destroy the group's self-declared caliphate. Meanwhile, in Aleppo, more than 40 people have been killed and around 100 injured by al-Nusra militant shelling. And now we move to the violence in neighboring Iraq, where 6 people were killed, including 4 soldiers, and 15 others wounded a short while ago, when a suicide bomber detonated his explosive vest near an army checkpoint in Tarmiya, just north of Baghdad. This, according to police and medical sources. The bombing comes as the Iraqi army tries to capture Fallujah, a stronghold of the Islamic State west of the capital. Several bombings have hit Baghdad since the offensive on Fallujah started on May 23rd. And now we move to the French Peace Initiative for the Middle East. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault earlier today, one day after the international summit was held in Paris, to revive the quest for a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The i24 News Desk with more.
A day after the much-awaited Foreign Ministers' Conference in Paris, and Israel remains firm in its objection to multilateral talks. Over 24 ministers from Europe, the Arab world, and the U.S. gathered Friday in the French capital in a bid to revive the stalled peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians.
Of course, considerable progress has been made over the last few years, but there is still no peace.
But Jerusalem, reluctant to cooperate with the French push from the very beginning, had so far maintained its objection to the bid, calling on direct talks with the Palestinians. Now it's on the world's top diplomats to persuade Israel to come on board.
It's something we shouldn't do in a haphazard way like this. There's some very specific things we'll all talk about and we'll see what we do. But we want to be constructive.
Ramallah, however, hailed the move, emphasizing the importance of mediation.
It's a message from the international community to the Israeli government that business as usual cannot continue, status quo cannot continue.
While showing no signs of cooperation with Paris, Jerusalem expresses optimism over the renewed interest of Arab nations in the stalled peace process, namely after last month's speech of Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, which called on the sides to go back to the negotiating table. But on Saturday, perhaps in a bid not to overshadow the French efforts, the Arab League expressed support in the European-led initiative, a move which followed the endorsement of the Saudi foreign minister. But it is still, however, remains to be seen how much further will this motion go without Jerusalem's willingness to cooperate.
And now we move to Asia, where the U.S. is recommending that China join a principal security network for Asia, despite tensions over the South China Sea. In a speech to an international security conference in Singapore, U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter addressed Chinese officials, saying that the United States will remain the most powerful military for decades to come, and that, quote, leaders must come together to ensure a positive, principled future. Ellie Ochenberg has the story.
Washington and Beijing continues their head-to-head battle over the disputed South China Sea. At a high-level security summit in Singapore, China's unilateral territorial claims in the form of building artificial islands were the center of attention, and U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter left no room for doubts on Washington's position.
China's actions in the South China Sea are isolating it at a time when the entire region is coming together and networking. Unfortunately, if these actions continue, China could end up erecting a great wall of self-isolation.
Washington was not the only one slamming Beijing's actions, as Tokyo announced it intends to step up military aid to Southeast Asian nations in a bid to block China's territorial ambitions.
Such attempts are nothing but a dare challenge to the order based on the principles of international law. Therefore, such attempts matter not only to the directly concerned parties, but rather no countries can be an outsider of this issue.
China claims nearly the entire South China Sea, a pivotal global shipping lane, which is also believed to have oil and gas reserves. Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines all have competing claims in the area, and the latter even filed a case against China at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. While a resolution is expected to be made in the coming weeks, China has already announced it will not recognize any ruling.
To put it simply, the arbitration case has gone beyond the judiciary of arbitration courts because the territorial and sovereignty dispute cannot be subjected to arbitration. So we see the arbitration is illegal and will not participate nor accept it.
With no solution in sight, both parties keep on boosting their military presence and capabilities in the region. And now, in what seems to have developed into a war of principles between the superpowers, an escalation is becoming a much probable scenario.
And former heavyweight champion Mohammad Ali has died. The 74-year-old former boxer spent his final days in a Phoenix area hospital after he was hospitalized earlier this week for a respiratory ailment. But the location of his passing and the official cause of his death have not been confirmed. The prizefighter suffered from Parkinson's disease for more than 3 decades and has kept a low profile in recent years. His funeral will take place in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. We were joined earlier by i24 News sports host Jonathan Regev, who discussed the prizefighter's legacy inside and outside the ring.
I heard today people define Muhammad Ali as someone who was a social network of one person when social networks, of course, were unheard of at the time. He understood that athletes or people practicing sports are way, way more than just athletes at a time when they were just supposed to box in his case. And that's it, and be as politically correct as you can. Muhammad Ali was someone completely different. He understood that first, as a sportsman, he's an entertainer. That's why we have heard all these sayings of him as I'm the prettiest there is, or sting like a fly. That was his essence. That is one thing. Second thing, he understood that he has a lot of power as a sportsman, not only in the ring, but outside. That's why we saw him. For example, he opposed the Vietnam War, refused to go to war, practiced civil rights, all those things that were really, really sort of unheard of at the time. Muhammad Ali was pretty much the first to practice them. Today, we see athletes involved in every possible way. Back in the 60s, in the 70s, that was something new. Muhammad Ali was perhaps a pioneer in this sense.
And presidential candidate Keiko Fujimori, the daughter of jailed former leader Alberto Fujimori, is considered a divisive conservative figure. But in Sunday's election, she's gunning to be the first female head of state in the South American country. Here's more in the following report.
Peruvians say you either love or hate Keiko Fujimori. At 41 years old, the presidential candidate has more than 20 years in politics under her belt. But it's the legacy of her father, disgraced former leader Alberto Fujimori, that looms large over her campaign. Born in 1975, she came of age during Alberto's iron fist rule in the 1990s. His brutal repression against the communist guerrilla group The Shining Path, which carried out attacks and kidnappings, won the admiration of many. But the 77-year-old is now behind bars for corruption and crimes against humanity. Keiko entered the political spotlight at just 19, acting as First Lady of the nation after the hostile divorce between Alberto Fujimori and her mother, Susana Higuchi. The mother of two first ran for president in 2011, but was defeated by current head of state Ollanta Humala in the second round. This April, her brother Kenji was elected a member of Congress, winning more votes than any other deputy. Now, Keiko is once again hoping to make history by becoming Peru's first female president, this time facing center-right economist Pedro Pablo Kuczynski in the runoff. Keiko has vowed to invest in infrastructure for poor communities and promised to fight crime by putting more police on the streets and building more prisons. During her campaign, plagued by massive protests, Keiko tried to both use her father's popularity for economic prosperity and distance herself from some of the dark memories of his rule, including the forced sterilization of more than 250,000 poor and indigenous women. Polls put her and Kuczynski neck and neck ahead of the June 5th vote, in which some 23 million are registered to participate.
And those were your latest headlines with us here at i24 News. Be sure to join us again in 20 minutes for the latest, and check us out on our website, i24news.tv, as well as Facebook and Twitter. I'm Danny Swibel. Thank you for watching.